Hello and welcome to Hindsighting, where we discuss all the movies to win the Best Picture Oscar and try to figure out if this picture truly is the best or is time rendered a different verdict. I'm Edward Clow. My guest today was a semifinalist in the Nickel Fellowship for his script Ghosts of Kiev. He made the 2015 blacklist with his script Castle Drive. His latest script, All Things Broken, sits in the top 1% of the blacklist website. He sold his pitch for special about the woman who created the Special Olympics. Currently, he's a prosecutor in Baltimore City. Matthew Scott Weiner, welcome back to Hindsighting.
Hey, Ed, it's good to be back. How are you?
Today, we're hindsighting the Best Picture of 1984, Amadeus. From 11 nominations, it also won Oscars for Best Director, Best Actor, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, Best Sound, and Best Makeup. It was nominated against The Killing Fields, A Passage to India, Places in the Heart, and A Soldier Story. So, Matt, I've been talking in not just the Best Picture episodes, but in the 1981ers also, kind of about the 80s, but I want to switch things up a tiny bit and talk about 1984 specifically, because that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to break format a little bit toward the end of the show with something 1984 centric. So you and I had talked about in our 2000s top 10 episode, you had made a point, which I agreed with, that the early 2000s were like a hangover from the 90s. And I had said, that kind of happens every decade. Like you look at the early 70s, it still feels like the late 60s and so on and so forth. I feel like 1984, it starts in 83, but 84 is really where the 80s become the 80s. We're done with ugly brown furniture. We're really in like that synth pop, Duran Duran. We're into like the big hair.
Yeah, it's the year of Purple Rain.
Yeah, Purple Rain. I mean, like music and fashion. I'm the last guy to talk about fashion, but there's still a huge difference. What a guy would wear in 1980 is way different than what he would wear in 1984, even though it's just 40 years later. So you could obviously see the needle moving a little bit in 83, but I feel like the 80s really become the 80s in 1984, like full steam. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, you wouldn't know it by the Best Picture nominations, but absolutely, 1984 is. I got a terrible memory overall, but I do remember vividly being in the theater with just my dad, seeing Gremlins in 1984 in the movie theater, and it was the scene where all of the eggs are in the in the laboratory at the school, and they break out and they kill the teacher or the scientist, whatever that guy.
Right.
And it freaked me out so much at 5 years old. I had my dad take me out of the theater, and I actually remember, and I thought I was like making this up, in making my memories up, or misremembering what we did, but I could have sworn that we left that movie and walked into Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, and watched that instead.
Same year.
And when I looked at the list of 84, like Sheena the Jungle came out in 84, and I absolutely went and saw that movie with my dad, which was probably inappropriate. I don't remember anything about that movie. Walked out of Gremlins because I was too scared. So it's my first actual vivid memory of the 80s, that I can still remember.
Two things there. One, Gremlins scared a lot of kids. So you weren't the only one there. But Sheena, which starred Tanya Roberts, R.I.P. Tanya Roberts, was the first movie centered around a female heroine, like a female superhero, because she's based on a book or a comic book. I don't know which, but she's the first one. And you said if it was appropriate or not. I'll probably cut this out. Sheena is PG, and yet Tanya Roberts does full frontal nudity in that movie, even though it's PG.
PG stands for pretty good. Wait. This was probably because this was 84's the year of Temple of Doom, so there was no PG-13.
No, but Spielberg, but Temple of Doom and Gremlins, which both came out the same summer, Spielberg produces one, directs the other. Both those movies are PG, but are traumatizing kids. And Spielberg calls up Jack Valenti and says, we need something between PG and R. He says, what about PG-14? And they just switched the 14 to 13. So Spielberg, because it served his interest, but I think he was right. He says, I don't make movies for adults, but maybe I don't make movies for like little kids either. So, and now it's everything is PG-13. Every Marvel movie, every IP.
And I feel like in modern cinema, you can get away with as much blood as you want, and you can say shit and ass and certain things, but I think you get like a one fuck allotment?
As
And
long
then
as
we
it's
would
not the verb, it can't be the sex act. You can say fuck you, but you can't say I want to fuck you.
oh,
Because
like
then
let's fuck. We can't.
it can't be about sex. It could be about
Gotcha.
you can't use fuck as the sexual verb. Otherwise you don't get
Which
the one.
is interesting. So you can say I'm gonna fuck this guy up, and it can be really bloody and still be PG-13. But if you're like, hey, I'm in love with you, let's fuck. Can't do that. It's gonna be R.
So let's move on to Amadeus, but first some stats. This is one of the few Best Picture winners never to crack the box office top 5. This stat I love, and I have a bit of a side story here, which will sort of keep this 80s thing alive. The soundtrack made number 56 in the Billboard album charts, making it one of the most successful classical music albums ever. Now, I'm going to do a little tangent here. The very first CD I ever laid eyes on was the soundtrack to Amadeus. I'm sure my mother bought it. And I used to take it out and I used to hold the CD. I think it was 86, 87. I asked my brother, who's got a good memory for this. So it's a couple years after the movie came out. He wasn't sure. He narrowed it down to 86 or 7. So I'm 8 or 9 years old. And I'd never seen a CD before. My parents had a stereo that had a CD like slot in it. Or not a slot, like a whole, And I used to stare at this thing and I used to play it. And when the music started, I would turn it off because I didn't like Mozart, at least back then. This is a cool stat. This is one of only 4 productions to win a Tony Award for Best Play and the Best Picture Oscar. Now, the other 3 are consecutive. So My Fair Lady, The Sound of Music, and A Man for All Season, which is the best pictures from 1964, 1965, and 1966, are the other 3 Tony Award winners that went on to be Best Picture winners.
So no, not Chicago.
I guess Chicago didn't win the Tony. I'm not. That could be bullshit. I don't know if Chicago won the Tony. Even if it did, it would have been well after this. Chicago's 18 years after this. This one I think is really interesting. It's almost a separate discussion, but I wanted to get into this now. This is kind of a casting what if, and I want to know what you think about this, even though we're kind of stepping on format a little bit. So, did you know who originally was supposed to be in this movie?
No idea.
Okay, so originally, the young Kenneth Branagh was cast as Mozart, and Ben Kingsley was going to play Salieri, but Milos Forman changed his mind and decided to go with American actors for the principal roles. That's I love these 2 performances by F. Murray Abraham and Tom Hulce. I wouldn't trade them for anything, but a young Kenneth Branagh and Ben Kingsley, that seems to me almost a lateral move. I don't know. What do you think?
One of the things that I've always loved about Amadeus was that, aside from F. Murray Abraham, no one went on to do fucking anything after Amadeus. Like Tom Hulce was in Parenthood, but that's about it.
Tom Hulce had a very big stage career. He originated Caffeine, A Few Good Men. He was
okay. Well, I'm not a big stage guy. I like plays more than musicals. I'm sure I would really like him in A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
But as far as film goes, I mean, no one. It's almost like they existed just to be an Amadeus, and so it was perfect, right? Like Kenneth Branagh, I don't think I could separate now. Maybe back then I could, but if I watched it now, it'd be like, oh, that's and we can get into that with Soldier Story, right? It's like, I thought Soldier Story is really good, but they're like, hey, young Denzel, right? So it kind of takes you out of it on a second viewing.
Interesting. Okay. This is a really cool stat. Speaking of F. Murray Abraham and Tom Hulce, this is the 11th and so far final film to receive multiple Best Actor nominations. So I'm going to run through them really quickly. Some of these movies you might know, some of them you might not. The first was The Last Command in 1928. Emil Jannings, who won, was also nominated with William Powell. Mutiny on the Bounty had 3 Best Actor nominees, which has never, ever happened before or since. Clark Gable, Charles Laughton, and Franchot Tone. From Here to Eternity had Burt Lancaster, Montgomery Clift. The Defiant Ones had Tony Curtis and Sidney Poitier. Inherent the Wind had Spencer Tracy and Frederick March. Judgment at Nuremberg had Spencer Tracy and Maximilian Schell. Schell wins. Beckett has Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole. Midnight Cowboy has Dustin Hoffman and John Voight. Sleuth has Laurence Olivier and Michael Caine. And Network has Peter Finch, who won, and William Holden. So it was interesting because I did a little digging into this, and the studios kind of don't want to campaign for multiple Best Actor winners. And this came up actually in our last Best Picture when we did Terms of Endearment, because Deborah Winger and Shirley MacLaine were both nominated. And that hasn't happened since Thelma and Louise. Thelma and Louise is kind of a special case because they didn't put either, nor should they have put either Gina Davis or Sarandon in supporting. But you do see that in the supporting categories more. In fact, this year, there's 2 nominees for Best Supporting Actress for the movie Sentimental Value, and that happens more on the supporting. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. This stat's come up before. Milos Forman won his second Best Director for this, and he joins this list of directors who have won 2 Oscars. Frank Lloyd for Cavalcade and Mutiny on the Bounty, Frank Capra for It Happened One Night and You Can't Take It With You, William Wyler, who won 3 for Mrs. Miniver, The Best Years of Our Lives, and Ben-Hur, Hi Moskowitz. Ilya Kazan for Gentleman's Agreement and On the Waterfront, Vincent Minnelli for An American in Paris and Gigi, Billy Wilder for The Lost Weekend and The Apartment, Sir David Lean for The Bridge on the River Kwai and Lawrence of Arabia, Robert Wise for West Side Story and The Sound of Music, Fred Zinnemann for From Here to Eternity and A Man for All Seasons, and Clint Eastwood for Unforgiven and Million Dollar Baby. At 2 hours and 40 minutes, it is number 74 in ascending length, number 75 if you count Sunrise, which we'll litigate if that counts in a later episode. It is number 46 on the box office list of best pictures with a worldwide gross of $90 million. I saw this movie a long time ago. I can't remember when. I know I'd seen it. I had not seen it in a long time, so this was sort of like an early hindsighting episode where I hadn't seen the movie in 20, 25 years. Like, I remembered the broad swaths of what happened, but I really didn't remember a lot of this. I did remember the opening, but what struck me about the opening of this, which I think is really, really strong, is it reminded me of Citizen Kane. You know, it reminded me of, it reminded me of like, it's not a death in this case, but it's an attempted suicide. And it's like, who is this old man? What is his deal? And I have to say, for a movie that's 42 years old, the makeup in this is really great. Really, really holds up. As I'm sure you did, I watched it on a very big screen, and one of the Oscars it wins is for makeup. And I mean, it's really credible. And of course, you have to credit F. Murray Abraham for bringing that off as an actor. I had a whole conversation, it might be the previous episode, but I had a whole conversation with Ali Bayless about An American Werewolf in London, about how the best makeup in the world is fucking worthless if you don't have a good actor to bring it off. You know, makeup can only do so much, even when you have like Rick Baker level makeup or Rob Bottin. I don't know who who did the makeup for this movie, I'm ashamed to say, but they won an Oscar, so they're not going to be slighted by me not knowing their name. But yeah, that's what kind of struck me about this. I just wrote good open, Kane-like.
I mean, like, this movie to me holds up like it could have been made last year or 2 years ago. Like, it doesn't seem dated at all to me. And where you were saying like it reminded you of Citizen Kane, watching it this time around, this movie reminded me a lot of Fight Club.
Really?
And especially in the beginning. Oh yeah, look, for sure. And in the beginning, you know, like, instead of it opening on essentially what is the narrator character committing suicide, it's Salieri committing suicide, because, you know, they both have to let go of this thing that has been consuming them their whole lives, right? Mm-hmm. This destructive force in their lives, and their way of releasing it is through suicide. And in both cases, they're not successful. But and I just kept coming back to Fight Club on it. So yeah, I think we're both kind of watching this movie through a different lens than we probably did when we were kids watching it. You know,
another thing I thought about watching this movie, which is not so much of a reach, and it's actually kind of a superficial and not even all that intelligent an observation. I wrote this down because there's so many like wigs, and because they're shooting in like the actual locations. I wrote down, is this movie fun, Barry Lyndon?
You know what? That's a really good point. It is fun, Barry Lyndon, because both have unreliable narrators. It's you know, you don't care if the characters aren't like sympathetic characters, and obviously the costumes and the lighting and everything. But I'd say the difference is that you know, Barry Lyndon is very much a Kubrick film, but it's also very much a period film.
Yeah.
Amadeus is about as fucking 80s as you could get. Hair and big music and sex and drugs and fucking debauchery. And it was like, even though all of the Best Picture nominations were all period pieces, Amadeus was the only 80s film in that category.
When he puts on the pink wig, I'm like, I feel like they're doing a little bit of, let's modernize this, because like Marie Antoinette, I talked about this with Mike Moskowitz when we did the Chariots of Fire episode. That movie's set in the 20s. Or the 30s rather, and has this Vangelis score. So it feels like more modern. It has like this electronica score, and it was one of the first ones. And they can't do that to the music here because this is about music. But Marie Antoinette, you know, has like pop songs and stuff. So they can't do that because this is about the composition of classical music. So they can't switch the music in this.
but one of the things that I noticed when I watched this movie, which is why I think it's so uh, digestible, is they purposefully did two things, right? No one has an Austrian, like Mozart would have an Austrian German accent, right? Like no one's doing an accent.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Hunt for Red October. It's like if you're Scottish, you're Scottish. If you're British, you're British. No one's Russian. Who fucking cares, right?
Which is
It's like we
brilliant.
have Tim Curry and we have Sean Connery. Like,
Yeah.
who gives a fuck? And so everyone's just using their American accents here, right? But they're also not talking in high English, like, they're just talking. They
Right.
talk like they would have talked in 1984. They're not using, flowery, poetic kind of like prose. And so the story just plays out like a modern story, just with costumes and wigs, which
Yeah.
is really interesting.
Have you? I'm assuming not. I've never seen or read the play. Have you?
No, but all I know about Amadeus versus like real life is that none of this happened. Salieri and Mozart were like friends.
Oh, really?
I know Salieri actually taught Mozart's kid how to play piano.
Oh,
He
really?
didn't poison him. He never, yeah, they weren't enemies. He never hated him. Like some of the things are true. All of the music that he writes, he wrote. Salieri existed. He was the court composer. But this whole idea of him wanting to get back at God for being, for making him mediocre and having to kill this clown who God gave this amazing talent, right? That's the point of its obsession, and it's about mediocrity and it's about regret.
Right.
None of that existed. So this whole story, it's called Amadeus, but it's like it's not about Mozart. None of this happened. And so you could have the same story and make it, John versus Jane or Tyler Durden versus narrator, and it would still be the same movie. But since it's almost like they used it as IP, right? It's like Mozart is IP, so let's do that, and people will come out and see it. But none of this fucking shit happened.
Yeah, I do think you're right about it feeling modern, but I think there's such a verisimilitude about shooting everything in the actual locations. And obviously the costumes and everything and the set design is well, I'm not even sure the set design. I think just the costume, it feels like it feels like time travel.
Talking about we were talking about the opening of the movie. I wanted to stress a couple things that I saw this time around in the opening, because I was looking at it obviously for the pod, so I was watching it in a different way. The movie is Salieri's fairy tale version of what happened, even though it breaks from his point of view a couple times when we're with like Mozart with his dad and stuff alone. But for the most part, it's Salieri's like version of what history was, which is always unreliable, right? We showed that from the very beginning, but he still has to accept the brilliance of Mozart, even with his disdain. And
Right.
so, like in the beginning of the movie, when he introduces Mozart, he says he was performing for kings blindfold at the age of 6, and you see Mozart playing the piano with a blindfold. And then it cuts to him as a kid, and he's also in a blindfold, but he's playing street games, being spun in circles, like pin the tail on the donkey or something.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, that's fucking amazing writing, right? Like 6-year-old Mozart is playing piano for the king with a blindfold on, and Salieri's literally spinning in circles with a blindfold on. And that's their entire relationship for the rest of the movie, is that visual moment. I thought it was fucking brilliant. And then when we're introduced to Mozart, almost like a monster movie, we see his feet, we hear his laugh, we don't see his face. It's like hidden in shadows. And then you finally see Mozart, right? What he does is he makes him say some vulgar shit. He says, "Eat my shit," right? Mm-hmm. But he says it backwards. And so like on the fly, this person, this Mozart, this clown, can just on his own talk backwards if he wants to, which is something normal person can do. But he's saying vulgar things. And so it's like the whole idea of like God chose this fucking idiot, this imbecile, to be his vessel for music and beauty.
Right.
And you can't deny what a genius he is, even though he's a vulgar clown.
Yeah, I like that Salieri, it's never, oh, this guy's not so good. He immediately recognizes this guy's so good, it's not fair, which I think is something I haven't ever seen before, because I feel like a lesser movie and I guess a lesser play would be like him being like, "Oh, I'm as good as him," and immediately for all of Salieri's shortcomings, I kind of almost credit him with okay, at least you're recognizing that this kid is better than
Look,
you.
I mean, this movie has all of the things that I fucking hate in movies. It's got the whole movie's a flashback. It's got voiceover, right? It's got unsympathetic characters.
Yeah.
It's got literally everything I hate about in movies, and it's just so compelling. That yeah, like you have to kind of forgive it for that, and uh, I don't know. It just kind of transcends all that stuff. And I think only Milos Forman could have done that with this movie, because when you talk about like best director, what does that mean? Is it shot selection? Is it working with the actors? How do you define it? It's like, how do you define editing? Is it the most editing? Is it like the most cuts? Like, what does editing actually mean?
Yeah.
The performances that he got out of even the smaller characters in this movie,
Yeah,
was so amazing that like he could have done. You're rooting. I mean, I don't know about you, but like I'm watching the movie and I'm rooting for Salieri to ruin Mozart's fucking life. I'm like, yes, he's gonna kill him with his own grief. Like that's fucking amazing, right? Like you're rooting for this person to do these horrible things. I can't think of any other movie I've ever seen that made me want maybe American Psycho in a different way,
right.
but like you want him to succeed at being horrible. And so when things happen for him and you see him as an old man and he's kind of like got this like coy little grin, he's like, ooh, he's like, oh yeah, you really fucked him on that one. Like go Salieri, you know? I don't know.
You know what else I took from this movie, which I don't think I would have taken. I'm assuming I haven't seen this movie in 25 years, maybe 30. I just don't remember. This is pre-Letterbox. I think maybe I was in college the last time I saw it. I just don't remember. But what my take on it is, I feel like this is also a movie, and I don't think this is unintentional, that's a lot about feedback and notes. Like when Mozart does his first opera and the Emperor Jeffrey Jones comes on stage and he's like basically giving all these notes, and Mozart's like, fuck your notes, you know? And I feel like so much of what Mozart's undoing in this is that he can't handle the notes he's getting because he knows he's right. And these people, which Salieri backs him up on, because the emperor doesn't know anything about music. Like he's got a terrible ear, he can't play, but he's the emperor. And Salieri kind of agrees with him. Like, yeah, I mean, but Salieri goes through that and he's more of like, okay, yes, of course, whatever you want. And I just think so much of this movie is just about somebody who's just exceptional at something having to deal with people who don't understand what he's doing. The whole rock star thing, and I'm sure this didn't happen, although maybe it did, when Salieri sort of crashes that party and he's holding the mask in front of his face and Mozart plays upside down, like not
Mm-hmm.
looking at the keys. That reminded me of Jimi Hendrix holding the guitar behind his head, which I don't think is an accident. And it's just that thing of like, not only am I the best, I'm the best fucking blindfolded. It's like, it's so punk. It's such a punky, shitty, like, this kid's just like, because I'm not like, I don't know as much about like music as you do, but I know that Hendrix playing the guitar behind his head was, if not the first time, one of the first times. It's like, okay, not only am I an amazing guitarist, I don't even have to look.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's like when a basketball player slam dunks and hangs on the rim, and Salieri's sitting there, in a fucking mask, having to watch that and having to hear this
Yeah.
crowd of mostly young people, mostly there's a lot of like young attractive women there. At least that's my memory of it. It could be a Mandela effect. And
But then
how
to add insult to injury, he does Salieri screams out like, do Salieri. And he does this like apish imitation of Salieri playing really seriously.
right,
Yeah, no one else was going to do that, but he threw it out there himself
right.
just so that he could watch this amazing musician like debase him. And so it's just like that whole everything about their dynamic, like every back and forth that they have, and it's like Mozart improves the entrance music that Salieri wrote for him, like
So awful.
like
Yeah.
yeah.
It just goes on the
it's like,
same, doesn't it? Like it just kind of goes on the
he's
same.
like, huh. He's like, and then he has just to punctuate it. He's like, ha, 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 right?
Yeah.
Like every time they talk to each other, they're like spitting venom at each other, but with a lot of like reverence and respect, even on both sides. It's
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know that it's a two-way street, because I think that Mozart doesn't think much of Salieri, but Mozart's also not smart enough to see how Salieri's playing him because he's so
He
up his
definitely
own
doesn't see
ass.
how he's playing him, but but there are a couple of moments in the movie where Mozart gives Salieri a compliment.
Yeah.
And Mozart is not played as somebody who would be self-aware enough to shine somebody on. And so
Right.
when he gives him a compliment, it's an actual compliment.
Right.
And to Salieri, it's like, like, oh my God, like he complimented me, but also like, fuck this guy at the same time.
Right.
And so I think that, yeah, like you said, you don't think that he thinks that much of him. I think it's more that Mozart doesn't think about him at all, which is even worse.
No,
right?
I think that's
like, I'd rather somebody think poorly of me than not think of me at all.
right. No, I think that's a good distinction. Is that Mozart doesn't even have the passion to think about this guy at all. I think that's an important distinction that you made, and I agree. Um, Yeah, I also because the one time, to jump around a little bit, the one time that Salieri really connects with him is at the end when Mozart's basically fucking dying and they're sort of collaborating. He's not even collaborating. He's just like, let me be your hands. And Salieri is literally just taking dictation, but he comes alive. It's the only time we really see him happy the whole movie, even though his plan's about to come to fruition. The fact that he's just fucking destroyed this. I mean, this kid's also destroyed himself. It's not all Salieri's fault, but he really had his
Yeah.
thumb on the scale. And the fact when his wife comes home and says, you have to leave, he's like, no, like I can't leave, because it's like, this is the closest that Salieri's ever going to get to fucking genius, just to see
Well,
how
so
this
if
kid
you
does
think
it.
about it on like a level, like level. Salieri wanted to be the hand of God.
Yeah.
But he wasn't.
Yeah.
Mozart was. So
Yeah.
by him being the hand of Mozart, like from the transitive property, if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C, right? It's Salieri's way of being the hand of God,
Right.
which is almost like stealing it away from Mozart. It's literally Salieri like stealing fire from the gods and them not knowing it. And so it's like it's this like such this like he wasn't doing it for Mozart because his plan was
Right.
that Mozart was going to write the Requiem and then die, and then Salieri would finish it and say that he wrote it. Like, that was the whole thing, I think, right? If I'm remembering correctly, he was going to take credit for it and say, oh, this great piece of music by Salieri. Like, that's what he says to the priest, right? Like, he literally, like, this fucking guy, he makes a priest cry in the movie. At the end of the movie, the priest is crying. Like, fuck this guy. I love it. I don't know why. Like, fuck this guy, but I want to see him win. I want to see Mozart suffer.
There's a lot of things this movie does that could not have been done on stage. The thing that you cited a few minutes ago about the blindfold and cutting the Salieri being blindfold, you can't do that on stage. I think they do a really good job. Having never seen or read the play, I know that, we just know it's a play. It would have to have very limited locations, which in a weird way this movie does. I mean, we are seeing the same palaces and things, but the scope of this and the things that they're doing cinematically, this could not be a straight translation in the way that something like A Few Good Men, great play, great movie.
Look, I mean, this is the same year as Passage to India, so scope is not. If you're going up against, David Lean, then scope is going to feel small no matter what. But Amadeus is a very big movie, and I think that the win for Best Adapted Screenplay is so deserved here because you look at other plays that were turned into movies, and they feel like plays. Glengarry feels like a play. A Few Good Men feels like a play. I can't think of others off the top of my head.
A Soldier Story
Chicago feels like
this
a
year.
play,
A Soldier Story, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, was a soldier's play. I think that's what it was called. I read that in college, and I think for the most part,
you can easily watch that movie and say this would make a good play. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this moment. So when Mozart's wife comes to see Salieri early on, and Salieri looks at the music, she kind of behind Mozart's back says like, he's sleeping or whatever. And Salieri looks at the music, and I love that we see his reaction without hearing the music, because obviously he's a musician, he could read sheet music. But I remember that from when I was maybe not a kid, but like younger. I remember thinking that moment was cool because it's like, I can't read. I'm not a musician. I can't read sheet music. But the idea that this guy obviously is competent enough to read sheet music, but like even just him reading it, he sees how incredible it is. Like probably any musician would. I just love that moment that like, because obviously it's done without any dialogue, but it's just him reading it, and he's just like, oh my God,
Yeah, because so you have to understand that like Mozart, according to the movie, there were no drafts. He just wrote it, and it was perfect as written, right? Hand to God. Yeah. And so when he's reading these, first draft perfect compositions,
Right.
you hear the music as he flips through the pages.
Oh, you do hear
And
it. I
so,
didn't. Okay, you do hear it.
yeah. So it's like every time he flips to a new composition, you hear the music, but it's all in Salieri's head, and that's why he gets so overwhelmed with emotion. He drops all of the compositions on the floor.
Right.
For us, I think like you can't watch this movie without comparing it to Immortal Beloved. Because that's the Beethoven movie. This is the Mozart movie, right?
Yeah.
But Immortal Beloved is like almost impossible to sit through, in my opinion. Maybe
No,
some people love it.
no, I don't know. I remember I maybe even saw it with you. I remember being kind of disappointed because Oldman walked on water for me, and I remember thinking he was very good, and I'm sure he was, but I remember not,
Yeah, the only thing I remember from that movie is him putting his ear on the keys while he was playing. That's like the only thing I remember.
Yeah.
But like the fact that we're talking about this movie as adults and we don't have to watch this, it's not homework. We don't have to watch this movie. I don't plan on watching Mortal Beloved again.
Right.
It's just another kind of like testament to like, who would have fucking thought that this movie would have been what it was when they were making it.
Well, I mean, I disagree a tiny bit because the play was very popular.
It was a play, yeah.
Yeah, it was very popular, and I think so. It was IP, and Saul Zaentz, who produced it, had bought the rights to the play. He also produced One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and The English Patient, so he won 3 Best Picture Oscars, and he was a record producer. That's what he did. I think his first movie was Cuckoo's Nest, so he was this record producer in Berkeley, and he and Michael Douglas hooked up because Kirk Douglas owned the rights to Cuckoo's Nest, so it was a real odd producing team. Two, I think, kind of first time. Michael Douglas was definitely a first time producer because he was like 30, and was on a fucking sitcom, not a sitcom. He was on Streets of San Francisco. So Zaentz has
San Francisco.
Yeah, but Saul Zaentz has a music background. Like he was a record producer, so I think that's why this spoke to him, and he snatched up the rights when the play. Because I think the play, from like the late 70s, I think. Because Peter Shaffer, who wrote this, his brother was also a writer named Anthony Shaffer, and Anthony Shaffer wrote Sleuth, and he wrote the screenplay for Frenzy, the Hitchcock movie. So
Nice.
It's a very, very storied English family of writers. Going back to how I used to look at the CD for this, I think the poster for the movie is the same as the poster for the play. Is this the hooded figure? That's Mozart's dad, right?
Yeah, well, it's Salieri's two-sided, two-faced, the happy face and sad face that he comes when he
pretends to be the guy when he hires him to do the Requiem.
when he commissions Mozart to write the Requiem. But the reason that he chose that costume was based on the costume that his father wore at the party scene that you were talking about earlier. And so it is because we go from the death of his father to Don Giovanni, and you see F. Murray Abraham, or you see Salieri watching this figure bust through the wall, and he's like, holy shit, he wrote this whole thing about his father. Right. And how he's never going to live up to his father's expectation. That's amazing, right? But then he's like, how can I spin that?
Right.
So he flips it, and then he dons the cowl of his father and shows up and commissions this piece that he's knows is never going to get finished.
Well, I guess I'm sort of half right then in that, because the first time we see Mozart's father, he's on the stairs and he's in that cowl. So the costume is on the poster. So I think we're both right.
Yes. It's Mozart's father, but it's also God looking down on Salieri. I mean, the whole movie is about not being able to live up to, the expectations of what you think your father wants of you. For Amadeus, for Mozart, it was his actual father. For Salieri, it was God, right?
I love the line. I don't know exactly where it is in the movie where Mozart says, I guess it's when he's trying to get approval to do his play that's set in the harem. He says, I'm a vulgar man, but I assure you my music is not.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like a maturation to him, that like because he has to defend it, he has to like realize that like, okay, I understand why these guys don't like me, but I am who I am, and I am my work. And I thought that was like a little bit of growth. This movie's not really about Mozart. It's about Salieri and how he sees Mozart. But I do think that I did like that moment. I felt like Mozart had some self-awareness. Maybe he always had, but I think the fact
that's actually that's one of the scenes where they break from Salieri's narration because he's not there witnessing it.
Right.
And so it's kind of like this movie breaks from that it builds a world of, this is a story once upon a time built by Salieri, but it breaks from it and it doesn't explain it. It doesn't, try to like retcon it or anything. And I was trying to like figure out like, well, how does this movie function as a story if it's being told by Salieri, but he's not in the room?
Right.
And it made me think of Shawshank. Are there scenes in Shawshank of Tim Robbins that Morgan Freeman's not in?
Yeah, there are, but I
I
think
couldn't remember.
no, there are. I think what it is though is that there's scenes that Morgan Freeman isn't in, but because in that situation they're in a prison, they're very confined. Tim Robbins would have relayed all these things to Morgan Freeman because he knows everything that happens. The only thing that Morgan Freeman doesn't know is Tim Robbins' escape plan, so we don't see it. We just think,
Right.
oh, he fucking hung himself, and we don't know what happens until the big reveal. So I think bringing it back to Amadeus, I think Salieri, any one of those people could have told him, or Mozart himself could have told him what happened. He also knew what was going to happen because either he set the plans in motion or he just knows I deal with these assholes all the time myself. So I don't think you're bumping on it either, but I don't bump on it because I think that's all information that would matriculate back to Salieri and he'd be able to tell it to the priest. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, for that, yeah.
Because Salieri can't be with him all the time because that just wouldn't make any sense. And also that section where Mozart is, I forget the character's name, Simon Cowell is the actor, but that guy who's basically come to my theater, it's more fun. And he's really starting to like kind of like lose his fucking mind. And Salieri is not there for any of that, you know? And I think that I guess it is sort of more about Mozart in that point, but it's still always through the lens of like, I think like there's so many biopics, which I think this would qualify, that just don't have like I think Immortal Beloved bored us because it was like, here's Beethoven, you know about Beethoven, here he is, cradle to grave, womb to tomb. And that's always the wrong way to go. Or if you're gonna go that way, it has to be, like the great biopics, I have a list on Letterbox, if you're gonna do like in a person's entire life, you better be as good as Spike Lee in Malcolm X. Like you better have like that kind of a visual flair, and you better have Denzel Washington in his best performance.
Yeah, but even Malcolm X though, right? Like it's broken up into like three sections. You have before jail, and then he's Malcolm X.
Right.
And so like it jumps ahead in time as opposed to like Ray or the Johnny Cash movie, like where it's just like, oh fucking Christ! Like that's why I didn't see. Like I couldn't get through the Bob Dylan movie. I didn't even watch the Bruce Springsteen movie. Yeah, and that's just about him recording Nebraska.
Right.
Like biopics are. Real life isn't that interesting. So biopics, by their very nature, aren't interesting. I don't care about Bohemian. I don't care about the entire story of Queen or Elton John's entire life. Like I just don't care.
Well,
it's not that interesting.
Music biopics, which we're talking mostly about, and this is definitely a music biopics. I mean, this is about a rock star. I mean, not technically, but like this is about a self-destructive genius who burns out too soon. Like this is you could say this is like they haven't really done a Kurt Cobain movie.
Yeah, it's funny you say, because I was thinking about like the only other movie I would want to see would be not a Kurt Cobain movie, Cradle to Grave, right? The story that I would love to see about Kurt Cobain is the recording of the MTV Unplugged album. It was right before he committed suicide, and he was like, on the verge of death. He had just come back from Paris. He was like throwing up stomach lining. Dave Grohl had to pick him up from the hotel and take him there, and it was this whole big thing.
Right.
I don't want to see a movie about Nirvana. I want to see a movie about that moment in time.
Right.
And for Amadeus, it's really, I don't know how long it is in the film.
It's not very long.
From like him meeting him to him, essentially killing him with commissioning the Requiem, it's got to be like, what, a year and a half? Because
Tops.
Mozart had no money and he...
Well, no, he has a kid, though. Sorry, he does have a kid.
Oh, he does have a kid, yeah. And he's like 5 years old, maybe 3, 4, 5 years.
So maybe it's 5 years. That's still not long for a biopic. That's still pretty tight.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is a music rock star biopic, even though Mozart isn't technically a rock star, but I think he kind of is the proto rock star.
Technically, none of this shit fucking happened, right? Like,
no.
So it's a biopic, but it's really just about, but it's not though. It's a story about obsession
Yeah.
and expectation and resentment. I mean, it's not about Mozart. It's just kind of like how Titanic's not about Titanic. It's about
Yeah.
this love story, but we still want to see the boat sink. Like this isn't about Mozart, but we still want to hear the music and we still want it to be Mozart.
Yeah, I think you're right. I guess it's not a biopic because it's creating, it's about a character in his
It's
life.
fiction. It might as well be Inglorious Bastards. Yeah.
Yeah. And to be fair, I don't know that the play or the movie purport to be, it may have been advertised as like, what if this happened? I don't know that the movie or the play are trying to pass themselves off as this is what happened. I mean, anybody who's, and I'm not, anybody who's, studied this era would probably say what you did, that like, no, this is not complete,
If you didn't know anything about Mozart, you would just assume this was Mozart, right? You're not going to do a deep dive into the library to see if it's true or not.
Yeah.
So they could get away with whatever they wanted.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
I mean, look, Killing Fields is about a real guy, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that is true. I didn't look it up.
You've convinced me that this is not a music biopic. It still hits a lot of the music biopic beats, and sort of in the down and out phase of this, like where Jake LaMotta is 80 pounds heavier. It's it's when he's doing that opera or whatever it is, and he's sort of like conducting, and then you see he's sitting in the orchestra. Like that's such a great specific visual idea, like kind of how far he's fallen. Yeah, like pretty much the last thing he does before he ends up in his apartment with Salieri. And Salieri, I think, is even there, and he is like, let's get him out of here.
He sees him collapse. He's just playing piano, and he just fucking
Yeah, I just feel like
it's such a great button too, right? Because like when we meet him with Salieri for the first time, and he plays the entrance music that Salieri wrote, he's on the piano and he's in complete command and control of the world. And now at the very end, he literally collapses while playing this shitty little tune that he wrote for this like crappy comedy, right?
Right. So I just love the idea of that. It's just like a visual of like just how far this guy has fallen, which again,
literally falling, falls off his chair.
Yeah, he falls off his chair, which again feels very rock star, because all these music biopics, it's always about somebody who dies tragically, whether it's from drugs or alcohol or like La Bamba, where it's just this horrible accident. I mean, there's always a tragedy that befalls. And
but what's amazing about this is that like, yeah, he drank. They talk about, Wolfie, you're drinking too much. You got to stop drinking. But it wasn't. That's not what his fall was. His fall was from exhaustion, from not being able to stop creating. It was like a creative exhaustion, which is like, it's still rock star, but it's not, cocaine and fucking, like going crazy. It's like the work killed him, his passion killed him.
Yeah, and you see that in other things too. I mean, you see that in, this is maybe a random example, but you see there's a section of Chaplin with Robert Downey Jr. where like he's going kind of nuts. There's no like drug stuff, at least in that movie. I don't know enough about Chaplin, but there's a point where he's editing one of the movies, and one of his wives, Diane Lane, is just like, "Is this how you lost all your other wives?" She's like, "You'd have to ask them." So that's a beat you see all the time, but I think it's true to life, is that like you do see, I mean, you just become obsessive and that can destroy you. I mean, all these movies are about what's going to destroy you. Is in this case, it's his obsessive nature. In other movies, it's drugs, it's alcohol, it's fucking rage or whatever it is. So, yeah, I do think the take on this, fictitious or not, does kind of stand this out. And yeah, and it felt like we're saying, it felt modern, even though it's 42 years old now. It didn't feel, because even though it's set a long time ago, a movie could still feel like the era it came out in, just by nature of who's in it. But like you said, most of these, I mean, F. Murray Abraham is a familiar face. He's still working. He was on White Lotus a couple years ago. I mean, he works constantly. Tom Hulce is not someone we see a lot of. And Jeffrey Jones, for good reason, is not in our lives anymore. So a lot of these other actors are older and, just died of natural causes.
But when you look at this, the same, like, I don't know the years that these two movies take place, but Amadeus and Dangerous Liaisons.
Right.
Like, what year, when did Dangerous Liaisons come out?
Came out in 88, so 40 years later.
88. You watch that movie and it feels like 88. It feels like late 80s, maybe early 90s, even though it's, I don't know. It doesn't have the same kind of feel. It feels dated if you watch it now. It doesn't feel fresh. And this movie always feels colorful and loud and fresh and uh
To kind of close as far as the movie itself, I think a big part of what makes this movie feel timeless in the best ways is that they're in the actual locations. And to link it to just another best picture one that we haven't covered yet, but we both seen, Schindler's List. I mean, couldn't be more different
right.
in terms of tone. But Schindler's List, every location is an actual location. They didn't build anything. They dress
You
things, I'm sure, but
yeah.
but but they're in. It's like in Schindler's List. It may seem like a strange comparison, but like they're in Auschwitz. I think the fact that, because this was a big fight to shoot the movie, it was a hard movie to raise money for, because they were insistent on, we want to go to Vienna, we want to shoot it in Vienna, we want to shoot it in these places. Maybe they built some things and it's just sort of seamless. I don't know. Maybe Mozart's apartment was built so they can move the camera around. That I can't speak to. But I think the verisimilitude of being in these locations and then having American accents and pink wigs and it feeling light
Well,
on
look,
its
you
feet.
talked about this. You talked about this in your Chicago pod with Brian.
Mhm.
How Chicago wasn't shot in Chicago. It was
Yeah.
shot on a stage. I think that this movie exists in a different class than Chicago because they took the time and effort to fucking shoot it where it should be shot and the way it should be shot.
And
It
then
wasn't on the soundstage.
and on the case of Chicago, Brian and I were just saying, like, do 2 weeks in Chicago, have them just like
Yeah.
walk across some bridges and shit. But in this, I mean, there's a shot when we see Salieri younger, he walks into that party and there's like 100 people in there and there's just a high ceiling and all the opera houses. I mean, my father always said he liked a movie with a lot of extras, and he was sort of half kidding. But the humanity in this movie, as far as there's like hundreds of people in these opera houses, in these palaces, all
All
costumed,
Yeah, all I could think of with those crowd scenes was I'm like, wasn't the plague like a problem at the time? Like maybe we're a mask. I mean, maybe because masking is like such a modern thing for us now. I'm like, they probably should mask.
No, I mean, half the people at those concerts died, but all right, Matt, it's time for Categorically Denied. Before we get to Best Picture, let's see if Amadeus was worthy of the other 7 Oscars it won. So we'll start with Best Director. Milos Forman beats Woody Allen for Broadway Danny Rose, Roland Joffe for The Killing Fields, David Lean for Passage to India, and Robert Benton for Places in the Heart. So, of those that you've seen that you remember, what say you?
I've seen all of these movies, and I will tell you that without a doubt, yes, deserve Best Director.
I agree. Yeah, that's easy. We'll just go ahead and go with that. Okay, so F. Murray Abraham wins Best Actor. He beats Jeff Bridges for Starman, Albert Finney for Under the Volcano, Sam Waterston for The Killing Fields, and crucially Tom Hulce for Amadeus. So let's talk specifically here about Abraham versus Hulce. Which do you think? Do you think the right person won? Throw a dart. What do you think?
I think that the right person won.
Okay.
I really wish they would have nominated Hulse for supporting actor.
Do you think they'd be category fraud though?
I don't know. I mean,
because today that's what would happen.
Is it a two-hander, or can you say that like Tom Hulce is supporting? I you know what? It's so arbitrary anyway. But I feel like Tom Hulce got robbed of an Oscar because how are you going to beat F. Murray in this movie? I don't know if you saw Under the Volcano, but Albert Finney was a close second to me. So of the 5 nominated, Tom Hulce is actually number 3 on this list for me. Sam Waterston, like that, I don't fucking understand how that happened. But
I thought he was very
Albert
good actually.
Finney,
I don't.
He's good. I think his accent threw me. Tom Hulce was so good, but he's the 3rd best person in this category. And if I look at everyone who was nominated in the supporting, and I guess the guy from The Killing Fields probably would have won no matter what. But Tom Hulce, I think of the people nominated in Best Supporting Actor, was the best of that bunch. So,
yeah, it's a tough one. I think F. Murray Abraham is excellent. I think today they put Hulce in supporting, category fraud or not. Yeah, I think Hulce is terrific. I haven't seen Albert Finney, but I like Sam Waterston. I like Jeff Bridges and Starman better than Sam Waterston. I like Holst better
Well,
than
you should
Bridges.
see Under the Volcano. Albert Finney, and Albert Finney makes Nicolas Cage look like a Saturday Night Live skit. Like,
Yeah, Cage watched Finney. He talked about the 4 performances, and Finney was one of them.
oh, okay, I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah. He said it was who was it? It was Finney, Dudley Moore in Arthur. I think Jack Lemmon in Days of Wine and Roses, and maybe one other. Finney and Moore, I know were 2 lodestars for him. Best adapted screenplay, it beats Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, The Killing Fields, A Passage to India, and A Soldier Story. What say you?
Yes, based on everything we said about like what it did different than the play, I thought Soldier Story was really, really solid, a really great adaptation of a play. But the things that they did with this film that you couldn't do as a play, yeah, no, it's an easy win. Easy win.
Yeah, I would uphold that also, because I think having not read the play, it's still evident that they opened the play up just based on what they're doing cinematically, so they didn't just transpose the play. So yeah, and I had not seen Greystoke, but I've seen The Killing Fields, Passage to India, and A Soldier Story, and confidently, I think just as a screenplay, Amadeus is way better. And I liked A Soldier Story about as much as you did. This one's kind of tricky. So art direction, it beats The Cotton Club, The Natural, A Passage to India in 2010. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, shout out to both of us for sitting through A Passage to India for this pod.
Yes, we'll get to that in a few minutes.
I would say that A Passage to India is the only film in this category that could have competed with Amadeus. And I don't think it was even close. Amadeus runs away with this.
See, here's my question. And this is because they're using the real locations. This is why I'm not quite sure I'd give it art direction. That said, I don't know how much they're dressing those locations. To be fair, Schindler's List used real locations and it won for art direction. So I'm okay with it because I'm thinking that this branch.
Guess if you're gonna go by like how much did they invent versus not invent or recreate, then 2010 should have won.
2010, I think might be where I would go with this because they built a lot of new stuff. But 2010 isn't like Alien, isn't like something we've never seen before. It looks great. Right. So, I mean, I'm not mad about it. I might go Cotton Club or The Natural because it's like they're clearly building a lot of stuff there. I think that, I just don't know what was done here. Okay, for costume design, Amadeus beats The Bostonians, A Passage to India, Places in the Heart, and 2010. What say you?
Yes.
Yes, for me. Slam dunk. For sound, Amadeus beats Dune, A Passage to India, The River, in 2010.
Yes.
I say yes, too. Sound's one of these things I don't get too in a tizzy about, unless there's something like Jurassic Park or The Matrix, which those movies always win anyway.
For me, it's the scene where Salieri is looking at the compositions and hearing the music in his head. That to me wins best sound. It's just that sequence wins best sound for me.
Yeah, great point. Because we both kind of stood that out. Last one, best makeup, it beats Greystoke in 2010.
Yeah.
The makeup in this is superlative.
That old age makeup's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And look, you know who did the apes for Greystoke? Greystoke, Legend of Tarzan, the apes were done by Rick Baker, right? He did the apes for Gorillas in the Mist, and he did the apes for Greystoke. And so Amadeus's old age makeup, I can 100% say, like, yes, it's better than the apes in Legend of Tarzan. And so if you beat Rick Baker.
So let's see if this is too many notes. It's time for the verdict. Against The Killing Fields, A Passage to India, Places in the Heart, and A Soldier Story, was Amadeus the best movie nominated this year?
Yes. And that is with the legacy nomination for David Lean. Passage to India, I think, was his last film.
Yeah.
You had to fucking bring the heat, I think, in order to be considered against Passage to India. And Killing Fields, I think, like, was like the sweetheart of like right, like the critics loved Killing Fields. I didn't love Killing Fields. I actually watched all 5 of these, and the only other movie I'd ever seen before in this category was Places in the Heart, and that was like maybe 30 years ago. And so like these are all fresh watches for me. And I'd say that Amadeus was easily the best picture of those nominated, and I'd say Soldier Story would have been number 2.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Amadeus is the best of these in a walk. I hadn't seen any of the other 4. Amadeus I saw a long time ago, and I said at the beginning of this conversation that so much of it I didn't remember. So it was almost like seeing it for the first time, even though I knew the grand swaths of what happened. But yeah, I want to talk briefly. This is how I'd rank, since I've seen all 5. This is how I'd rank them. I put Passage to India last. I thought Passage to India was really, really dull. I think it takes too long to get going, and all the beginning of this season, I talked about stuffy Best Picture winners and nominees, and A Passage to India is the stuffiest of all the nominees and winners up to now. It does get interesting just way too late. Like when she's in the cave and says that she was raped, I'm like, oh, okay, that's really interesting. But that happens like 2 hours in.
Yeah, I think I even texted you when that happened and you hadn't watched the movie, and I was like, oh, this movie just got good. But it was like 2 hours into the movie, and then there's really no payoff for it. It's kind of like dissolved.
And it's a trip to see the young Judy Davis, who I only really knew from Woody Allen movies. I've never even heard her. Actually, she's not even doing her native accent here because she's Australian. She's playing English. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen all of them. I don't know how into David Lean I am. I love Bridge on the River Kwai, which we're going to cover. Yeah. And I really admire Lawrence of Arabia. I don't know how much I like it, but we're obviously going to cover that on this show when I get to 1962. I find Dr. Zhivago just as boring as this. And what's I understand his place. I don't think he's a hack. I think he can capture Vista very well. And I think obviously David Lean is a huge lodestar for Christopher Nolan. I think he's the biggest influence on Christopher Nolan ever. And Nolan has said that. And you could definitely.
I didn't know that, but I 100% I can see it.
Yeah.
The only thing I ever think of with David Lean is unfortunately a Kevin Spacey line from Swimming with Sharks, right? Where they're like, we need someone like Lean. And they're like, well, Lean is dead. He's like, no, he's unavailable. You know, that's all I remember from David Lean.
I think the interesting thing about Lean, kind of Passage to India turned out to be his last movie. He died about 7 years later. He was going to direct Empire of the Sun with Spielberg producing, because David Lean, to his credit, was a huge Raiders of the Lost Ark fan. He thought Raiders of the Lost Ark was just so great, and you could see the visual inspiration of David Lean on Raiders of the Lost Ark because it's in Tunisia. Obviously, Raiders is a fuck ton of fun, and most of his movies aren't. But I do wonder, and I like Empire of the Sun as it stands now. I do wonder if Lean had directed that could have been a really great. Well, I don't know. It's a great story. I'm wondering if he directed the script that Spielberg had Tom Stoppard write. I wonder what that would have been like. Maybe it wouldn't have been good.
No, so David Lean is his own editor, I think, right? Doesn't he?
He was on Passage. He wasn't on. I know for a fact he wasn't. I know for a fact he was on Passage. He was not on Lawrence of Arabia, because the very famous editor Ann V. Coates, who went on to do like Out of Sight and Unfaithful and all these great movies, won an Oscar for cutting Lawrence of Arabia. So he didn't used to be.
Like at the end of his life, if he's cutting his own movies, I mean, Passage to India. He needed more. He needed more editing in that movie, and so I really like Empire of the Sun. So
do I. I would put Passage to India number 5. Number 4, I would Places in the Heart. I think the performances in Places in the Heart are really excellent, really great cast, and it's not too long. It moves at a pretty good clip. I guess I just found the stakes a little too. I just wasn't that involved in the story. It's a little Oscar-y for me, even though I think the performances are all great.
Danny Glover's really good in it.
They're all great. Really Sally Field's great. Malkovich is great. Ed Harris.
I really like the scene where the little kid says oh, my dad was killed, and he used the N-word, but instead of getting enraged, Danny Glover's he's like, hey, you shouldn't, you got a curse on you for touching that rocking chair.
Yeah.
And he takes the kid's hand, and he in a very playful way, humanizes himself to this kid who doesn't even know he's being racist. I
Right.
thought that was very subtle in a movie that wasn't very subtle.
Yeah.
So I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think just the cast, it's just this incredible cast. I mean, Sally Field, Danny Glover, John Malkovich, who was nominated, Ed
Yeah.
Harris, Amy Madigan, Lindsay Krause, Terry O'Quinn. Killing Fields is something I always avoided because I thought it'd be really brutal, and boy, is it brutal. I thought that it's interesting looking at this movie so soon after watching Gandhi and Missing, because there's just a lot of stuff in the 80s of just showing mass genocide, like bodies in the streets. I mean, I'm watching a lot of that now, and not to get political, it's these movies feel very relevant to what's going on
You know
today.
what? It felt a little too brutal for me, and maybe it's because, and I'm just thinking this now, like maybe it was just triggering for
Yeah.
everything that's going on now, that it didn't feel like escapism to me. And I think you brought this up on the early pods on the aughts, right? About like after 9/11, like maybe people just weren't ready to see serious things for a little bit. I didn't want to watch Killing Fields. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought it was very impressive, but I didn't want to watch it. And I'd rather watch Amadeus.
Well, the thing about the Killing Fields, which I admired, and I admire this about Gandhi and Missing also, is that, well, I guess Missing more than Gandhi in this context, is that it didn't feel Oscar bation-y the way that Places in the Heart and Passage to India do. Like, it really was just like kind of unflinching and brutal and and hard to watch. Not something I'd ever sit through again. But I also feel it's kind of the inverse of the 2000s because, you know, we have Reagan in office, and I think, you know, there's definitely silly things going on in the movies, but I think there's this appetite because these movies all made a decent amount of money. I don't think you could be nominated.
Yeah.
You can't be nominated or win Best Picture unless you're making, at least in the 80s, unless you're making a decent amount of money or you're a blockbuster. That doesn't happen until like the late 90s, until Harvey Weinstein, love him or hate him. So anyway, I think Killing Fields is definitely a brutal movie. It definitely feels relevant, but it's something I just didn't know about. I feel like I know a lot about the Vietnam War. This is going on at the same time in Cambodia.
Right.
And yeah, not a fun watch, but I think very good. And I think the performances are very strong. Sam Waterston, Highness Noir, and Malkovich, and who else is in it? Craig T. Nelson's in it for a couple scenes, and yeah, it's not a fun watch. The best of these, which Matt would agree, Soldier Story. I read the play in college, and this was like the biggest surprise because I actually thought this was going to be like kind of a chore to sit through, and I thought this was like really taut and really well acted, and I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, a young Denzel Washington is in this, and so he sort of emerges from it, and he has like a really good part in this. You could definitely see like this is the first movie performance where, you know, he just cry freedom 3 years later, gets his first Oscar nomination, and then Glory, and then it's off to the races.
Yeah.
But I really liked, and I know Matt agrees, the main actor here is a guy named Howard Rawlins, who tragically died really young. He was like 46. He's the lead in this, and I want to talk about somebody who could have been a fucking movie star. I really feel like Howard Rawlins, who I believe he was on the show In the Heat of the Night with Carol O'Connor that they did in the 90s. So he did work. I don't know why he died so young. I couldn't bring myself to look it up, but really cool movie, sort of the Denzel connection. If you like Courage Under Fire, I think Soldier Story is a similar thing where there's like this military murder. And I also we were talking about Best Supporting Actor, Adolph Caesar, really terrible name, was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and he also pops up in The Color Purple in a kind of a similarly nasty role. But Adolph Caesar's an actor I'd never heard of, and I thought he was also fantastic in this.
Yeah.
You know, because he's the guy who gets killed in the very first scene, so I'm not spoiling anything. You know, it's
the African American actor Adolph Caesar.
Yeah, I mean, you better. I mean, yeah, he probably was. Hitler was probably, you know, he probably was like a little kid when Hitler came to power, so he didn't want to change his name, you know?
Looking at these best pictures now, Ed, 1984 really loved racism.
Yeah.
4 out of the 5 are racism movies. Oh, yeah, like they're all period films, nothing is contemporary. And 4 out of the 5 is racism. Soldier Story is racism, Place in the Heart is racism, Passage to India is racism, Killing Fields is racism. Yeah.
So we're doing something a little different format-wise. Since it's 1984, we're going to disrupt the format and each give our top 5 movies of 1984. So Matt, what is your number 5?
Okay, so since your pod is hindsighting, this is all through the lens of hindsight and nostalgia. and what has actually had an impact, the biggest impact of 1984 on cinema, in my opinion. Number
Okay.
5 is This Is Spinal Tap.
Okay.
So This Is Spinal Tap was pure 80s fucking, big hair, rock star, glory. I'm happy to be bringing Rob Reiner into this pod.
Yeah.
It created the mockumentary, and unlike other 80s comedies, which you could look at 16 Candles, you could look at Revenge of the Nerds, anything like that, you watch This Is Spinal Tap today, and it is just as fucking funny and irreverent and brilliant as it was in 1984. And I don't think you could say that about any other comedy in that year.
Great choice. I would push back politely on it creating the mockumentary because I brought up in our 83 episode Zelig, which came out a year before.
Yeah.
But I did say in that episode, those two movies were probably being made at the same time. So I think it's just by a nose, Zelig. But as far as but Zelig is not a popular movie. This Is Spinal Tap is. So there's no Best in Show. There's no A Mighty Wind. So This Is Spinal Tap is the more important and more popular mockumentary. So I will still give it to that. And yeah, that's an incredible directorial debut from Rob Reiner. And I'd say the first, I mean, there's almost 10 years in a row where he doesn't put a wrong foot down. And yeah, I mean, obviously it's horrible that we lost him the way we did. But yeah, great choice.
Like, I was talking to Max, you don't have to put any of this in. I was talking to Max about Rob Reiner. Like, he really didn't make a movie in the same genre twice. And no matter what genre he worked in, he fucking killed it.
Well, Rob Reiner, Barry Levinson, Ron Howard, Lawrence Kasdan, the first 10 years, it's always a different genre. And they do everything. And the hit rate is perfect, if not really high. And we don't have directors like that anymore. There's just no space for that. So, yeah. Okay. My number 5 is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. This is the first Indiana Jones movie that I saw in the theater. And when I saw it at 6 years old, I was completely obsessed with it. And this has not happened in any other movie. When I got to be about 18, I thought this movie was gross and unwatchable. I fucking hated this movie. But today, I've kind of like sprung back. Today, I admire this because I admire this movie for 2 reasons. One, it's totally not the first movie. They don't run back the first movie at all. It's its own thing. And I just love how shit fuck crazy that this movie is. So much of this movie is offensive not only to children, but to the entire country of India. And it's really interesting because in the Gandhi pod, I talked with Scott Frank about how India had a real moment here because Gandhi being the most significant one, we're talking about Passage of India, but in between, the 2 biggest action heroes go to India. Indiana Jones goes to India and Temple of Doom, and James Bond goes to India and Octopussy. All that happens in a 2-year period. So India was like really hot shit. The most offensive, and there are offensive things in Octopussy, God knows, but this movie's so offensive and so crazy. But
it's the second craziest sequel ever made, I'd say.
What's the first?
Oh, Gremlins 2.
Oh yeah, I thought you were going to say that. But Robert Zemeckis said this really great thing about sequels, this really smart thing, because they asked him, why haven't you done a sequel to Roger Rabbit? And he said, here's the problem with sequels. I think this is so fucking smart. It's lose-lose because if you make the same movie again, everybody says this is the same movie again. If you make it too different, everybody says, where's the movie I liked? And he's absolutely right. So few movies get that right. Because I like Back to the Future 2 for a lot of the same reasons, is that it's so fucking crazy, but it's not the same movie again. And that's a movie where they break into the first movie.
Well, Temple of Doom is actually a prequel. Is Temple of Doom the first prequel? I don't know. I didn't look it up.
The prequel thing is interesting. So it's set a year before Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I've heard that the reason that it's set a year before is that he didn't want Indy to not end up with Marion. The problem is that if you look at it as a prequel, the character makes no sense in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Why is he so skeptical about magic if he's had the experience of Temple of Doom? I've never gotten a straight answer in that. So technically you're right. I mean, I also recently found out, and this is not a spoiler, that Wake Up Dead Man happens before A Glass Onion, because apparently in A Glass Onion, they make reference to the Good Friday murder, which is what Wake Up Dead Man is about. That has no bearing in the sort of continuity of Benoit Blanc because there really isn't any. But I think that's just like a fun thing of like, okay, 2 and 3 happen in opposite order. But yeah, that's always baffled me about Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I think it doesn't make any sense for his character in the first one if he had the experience of the second one, but I mean they did do it, so I don't know.
Eh.
So what's your number 4, Matt?
Number 4 would be Beverly Hills Cop.
Great.
And that's because just like with what I think this is Spinal Tap creating mockumentary, I think Beverly Hills Cop created the action comedy in a way that like kind of like the buddy cop film was created. Even though Beverly Hills Cop is Axel's movie, it's still really a buddy cop movie. It's like, like even though this is a three-hander, it's really a buddy cop film between Eddie Murphy and Judge Reinhold, and it takes itself seriously as an action movie, and you know that because Tony Scott did the sequel, right?
Yeah.
But it's also extremely funny, but it's not like Revenge of the Nerds. It's not like, like it's a true action movie with a true comedian being an action hero.
Yeah.
Now that's like, par for the course. You've got, every comedian like gets like built to be a fucking Marvel superhero now. It's like not a big thing, not a big deal. But in '84, that didn't happen. I don't think you could have Lethal Weapon without Beverly Hills Cop. I don't think you could have, Rush Hour without Beverly Hills Cop. I don't think you could have any of these action comedy franchises without Beverly Hills Cop. And I don't think that it gets enough credit. I don't think Eddie Murphy gets enough credit for what he did coming off nothing but comedies to be a legitimate action star. I mean, Bruce Willis does it in Die Hard a few years later, but he wasn't a comedian the way that Eddie Murphy was a comedian, right? So,
right. I mean, Eddie Murphy was
Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah, great choice. And what we're talking about at the top of the show, I mean, this is a movie very 1984. We're seeing the neon. We're seeing just all the 84ness of 1984, and it, great choice. Really fun franchise. I mean, 3's not very good, but I like the most recent one they did, Axel F. I thought it was a lot of fun. And my number 4 is Against All Odds. So Against All Odds is a remake of a 1947 movie called Out of the Past. And in that movie, Robert Mitchum, Jane Greer, and Kirk Douglas have such amazing chemistry that trying to replicate it in a remake is a fool's errand. And yet, in Against All Odds, Jeff Bridges, Rachel Ward, and James Woods do exactly that. This is one of those rare remakes that can actually stand right up next to the original. You can actually look at both those movies and the stories told in a different way. And the take on Against All Odds is really, really interesting. The fact that the main character is not a PI, but an NFL player. I thought that's such a master stroke. And as Matt can attest, Jeff Bridges is in the best shape of his life in this movie.
To say. You stole my thunder on that. I was going to say that.
You could say it.
When I met Jeff Bridges on the set of Seabiscuit, for all of you who don't know, I'm blurry in the background of the first shot of Seabiscuit, and I was not union at the time, and I was at the craft service table between shots, and Jeff Bridges was at like the SAG table, and he's like, "Hey man," he's like, "What are you doing over there? Like, come over here and get the good shit." And I'm like, "Okay, Mr. Bridges." And it was just me and Jeff Bridges at the craft service table. And I'm like, I didn't know what to say to him. I'm like, "Hey, just so you know, I've always wanted your body from Against All Odds. It's the perfect fucking physique, better than Tyler Durden." And he's like, "Thanks, man. I worked really hard on that, so I appreciate it." He was like such a bro about it, patted me on the back. A very cool guy. He's exactly like you'd think it would be, but and
the poster of this movie is him with his shirt off.
Abs. It's really just his abs.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Bridges really is like Paul Newman or Denzel in that he's a character actor who looks like a leading man. We talked a lot about Rachel Ward in our Sharky's Machine pod, which I think was the 2 episodes before that. And I think that this is her best performance. This is the best showcase for her. It's a really unfortunate haircut. This was a haircut that was really cool when it came out. The men in this movie look fantastic. Her haircut was very cool, and like my mother got it. I don't know if she knew what this movie was. Still a stunningly sexy and gorgeous woman, and her performance in this is fantastic. This was Rachel Ward's best showcase, And I think it's unfortunate. I said in the Charlotte Keys Machine episode, and I think it applies here, that I think it's unfortunate that Kathleen Turner came around at the same time. They don't look anything alike, but they're both very sexy voices, very like dangerous. And I
We
think,
talked about that, right? Like
yeah,
not we talked about that just on the phone about how Kathleen Turner, and you could say the same thing, aggressively sexy,
yeah,
which was not like 80s appropriate for a leading woman, right?
yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, and her chemistry with Jeff Bridges is incredible. The third piece of this is James Woods. James Woods, this is the performance that really kind of broke him. He had knocked around in movies for 10 or 12 years before this. You can see um, he certainly has played a lot of assholes. What I love about this James Woods performance is that, yes, he's an asshole, but you totally believe that he loves Rachel Ward's character also. And in the one scene they have alone together, you kind of see what she sees in him. You kind of see like, oh, I could see these two being together. I don't want them to be together, but it's not, because the thing I always complain about, and the example I always use is like uh Bradley Cooper in Wedding Crashers with Matt, which Matt is also in. Uh Terrific actor. That role is so poorly written that I hold it against the Rachel McAdams characters. Like, why is she with this fucking guy?
Right.
Love triangles when they're in serious movies or comedies are almost impossible to get right. I mean, obviously Casablanca is the premier example, but I really feel like these three performances are very good, and the fact that it's a remake of three very effective performances, because the first movie, Kirk Douglas, that role breaks him the way it breaks James Woods. What is your number three?
So it was going to be Paris, Texas, because of how much influence it had over indie cinema in the 90s.
Yeah.
And also because of the members only jacket that is rocked in that movie like nothing else. But I decided not to put Paris, Texas in the list because I fucking hate that movie and I can't stand it.
Okay.
And so instead, it's a split decision between Ghostbusters and Gremlins. And here's why. Gremlins and Ghostbusters builds off of American Werewolf in London for horror comedy. And I think that when you look at the IP, people think that Ghostbusters and Gremlins are this amazing IP. It's lasted, all these decades, but really none of the incantations of these films, apart from maybe the real Ghostbusters cartoon, which maybe I'm looking at from nostalgic perspective, but aside from the real Slimer and the real Ghostbusters cartoon, and just the bonkers fucking wackiness of Gremlins 2, which had amazing character effects and practical effects, like specifically the bat, gargoyle, gremlin, and Brain, right? Like just the animatronics for Brain better than Yoda, right? And just like how he can articulate, really created that genre. And you wouldn't have all of these funny horror films that kind of like walk that line if it wasn't for these films, and none of the sequels or reboots or reimaginings of these of this IP even comes close to the original. And so it's so timeless, right? Stay Puft is so timeless. Gremlins has become Minions. It's become Angry Birds. Anytime you have like a ton of small characters wreaking havoc, it all comes back to Gremlins. Mm-hmm. And you wouldn't have Minions without Gremlins, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that just the influence of what those two films did in the same year, Joe Dante for Gremlins and Ivan Reitman for Ghostbusters, like these were comedy directors who dabbled in other genres, and they fucking nailed the horror aspects of it. Like some parts of Gremlins are fucking terrifying. Yeah. And some parts of Ghostbusters are still fucking terrifying. Yeah. And so like, props to those two movies to come out in the same year and have such an impact on future cinema.
Yeah. Great show. Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen Gremlins in a really long time, and I want to show it to my daughter because it's right up her street. But
worst Christmas movie ever.
but I did show my daughter, 40 years ago now. I showed her Ghostbusters, and she didn't get scared by anything, or at least not traumatized, because she's pretty tough. But the only thing I'll kind of say about it is the scene that's like legit horror in Ghostbusters is where Sigourney Weaver's sitting in the chair and the fucking arms come out of the arms of the chair. That is something I would put against any true horror moment out there. I'd put that on a list of like any true honest to God horror movie because that is fucking terrifying. And yeah, great choice. So um my number 3 is Romancing the Stone. And I want to talk specifically about Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner because I think this is a key movie for both of them in different ways. So, for Michael Douglas, if you look at the movies he was making before this, he was a really bland leading man. He was trying to be Harrison Ford, and it just didn't work. He was sort of awkward and not confident. And I think this is really the first time he plays a fucking asshole. And it's kind of like in this roguish Indiana Jones way, but he's like a way bigger asshole than Indy is. And that's, it's this and then Fatal Attraction and then Wall Street. And that's Michael Douglas is like one of these people, kind of like Robert Downey, where when they're doing something wrong, they're at their most accessible and their most bankable. And I think this is where he kind of gets comfortable in his skin as a leading man and finds his persona. For Kathleen Turner, she had done Body Heat and The Man with Two Brains, which is basically a parody of the Body Heat performance. I mean, if it's okay for me to say, she's one of the sexiest women who's ever been on screen, but here she's playing kind of a lovesick, neurotic woman. And in so many movies where you have these beautiful women playing like, I can't get a boyfriend, you kind of roll your eyes, but she really sells it. I mean, the opening of this movie is her crying and going through her apartment trying to find tissues that she can't have. And it isn't like she makes herself ugly. She still looks great, but it's just in her posture. And I think Kathleen Turner was really one of these like all-rounders like Faye Dunaway a few years before her, where obviously she's off the charts beautiful and sexy and all that other stuff, but she was also an incredible actress. And I'm focusing on the body language because her only Oscar nomination is 2 years later for Peggy Sue Got Married. And in that movie, she's playing, she's 32 years old playing a 16-year-old, and it's all body language. They don't do any, there was no real CG back then. There was no makeup or anything, but the way she carries herself, she's credible as a 16-year-old. I mean, they're also surrounding her with actors in a similar age who are playing younger also. So the combination of Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner together is what I grew up on, and it really sucks. They only made 3 movies together.
Let me ask you a question, Ed.
Yeah.
Because Romancing the Stone is kind of the same formula as Raiders of or Temple of Doom, which you had as number 5.
Yeah.
How do you compare the two? Do you see similarities in them?
Yeah, I was just about to say, this is an Indiana Jones knockoff, but it's a really good one because the central relationship is deeper than the Indy and Marion one. That's not a fault of Raiders. Raiders is just not interested in that. I mean, their relationship is good, but it's
more like Temple of Doom, right? Where it's like she comes in and she's not equipped to deal with the jungle. And
yeah, I guess it's more like Temple of Doom. Yeah, because Marion's much tougher than Willie Scott or Joan Wilder. So no, I think it's definitely something that was going on. Not for nothing, this is a big movie for Robert Zemeckis, who's a Spielberg mentee, and Spielberg had produced his first 2 movies. He did not produce this one. And this was one of the few things that Zemeckis did for hire, and there was no confidence in it. The studio was talking about not even releasing it, and it was a huge, huge hit. And off the back of this, he gets to do Back to the Future a year later. Yeah. So this is something where he had felt like Spielberg had produced his first 2 movies, I Want to Hold Your Hand and Used Cars. They weren't successful. He felt like he was letting Spielberg down. Michael Douglas hired him because Michael Douglas produced this movie too. This is the first movie he produced since Cuckoo's Nest. Since China Syndrome, and hired Zemeckis to do this. And it's just an important movie for the director, the 2 stars, even Danny DeVito, who's the third banana in this. He was, sort of in between Taxi and this. And so it's a big movie for him. He kind of becomes a box office star, however unlikely off the case of this. So, Romancing the Stone is just a really fun movie. And there's fun action scenes, but I think it's really these performances that center this movie.
A great pick, Ed. You know what I love the fact that so far our lists have not intersected at all, which is fantastic. 84 is there's so many fruit to pick from the tree of 1984 that I love that we have different
So what's your next fruit? What's your number 2?
Number 2, would be A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, wow.
Um, Before Nightmare on Elm Street, we had Halloween and Friday the 13th,
Mhm.
and they were, like the idea was, horror comes to the suburbs, horror comes to the summer camp, like horror comes to where you're not expecting it. What Nightmare on Elm Street did was, and Hellraiser was a few years after this. What Nightmare on Elm Street and Hellraiser did was take horror to, you're never safe no matter where you are, because fucking this guy's coming for you in your nightmares, in your dreams.
Mhm.
And Freddy Krueger in this movie was kind of like the beginning of body horror
Yeah.
as a genre, you have The Fly coming out, Cronenberg doing stuff with The Fly that no one had ever seen.
Yeah.
And then you have all of these like kind of grindhouse movies. And now body horror is its own subgenre within horror. And nobody was ready for A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
And the fact that Scream is still a viable franchise, which was a meta commentary on A Nightmare on Elm Street from Wes Craven, right?
Yeah.
Shows you the legacy of this film.
Yeah.
It's so ingrained in our brains and how we're wired for horror, how we're wired for terror, that, 40 years later, A Nightmare on Elm Street is being repurposed as Stranger Things because it's still that terrifying.
Yeah.
So you can't ignore the influence of that film and what Wes Craven built for horror and just for cinema in general.
Yeah, I've been saying every episode about the 80s how every genre is really strong. Horror, action is never stronger, comedy is never stronger, adult dramas are never stronger, you know. Uh all those genres are just firing on all cylinders, and it probably kicks into high gear. I mean, we have great horror movies. We have The Thing 2 years before. And we're seeing his makeup is getting better and special effects are getting better. You know, it's like kind of like this space race to who can do the coolest makeup. The only thing I'll add to the Nightmare on Elm Street conversation is that I remember when the TV ads were running and there's a shot, I don't know the movie as well as you do, where Freddy's arms are like super, super long. That just freaked me out. So anyway, that image always stuck with me. You said we had no overlap. We're about to have overlap. My number 2 movie for 1984 is Ghostbusters. You kind of touched on a lot of this, so I'll be brief. I think the reason why none of the sequels and spin-offs have worked is because I think there's like a little bit of fairy dust sprinkled on this movie that just can't be replicated. And I think the best quote I ever heard about Ghostbusters was said by Harold Ramis, who co-wrote the first two, and is probably, I talked about how comedy's never stronger than it is in the 80s, and Harold Ramis is like 80% of the reason why. Just really one of the smartest minds about comedy. And what I love about Harold Ramis is that he was always able to bring a reality to these high concept things. And what he said about Ghostbusters, he says, Ghostbusters works because it's about guys starting a business. The sequel doesn't work because it's about a bunch of guys fighting ghosts. And I think that's really the mistake that all of these sequels and spinoffs do, is that it's too much about the fucking ghosts. And I think that that's why this movie works. It's about 3 guys starting a business. It's something that like anybody can kind of understand or relate to. It's like, we're 3 guys, we lost our jobs. What are we going to do? We don't have money. Oh, we're going to use this place. We're going to get this car. You see all the pieces of it. And I think for all the incredible technical skill that went into making this movie, because this movie's a fucking class act. Albert Bernstein does the score, Laszlo Kovacs shoots it. It's just like such a class act. I think one of the intangibles of this movie is the chemistry between Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver, because these are 2 actors who should not be on the same block. Sigourney Weaver had never done a comedy. She did this movie called Deal of the Century, this Friedkin movie that's like unwatchable, that I think was with Chevy Chase. It's not her fault. It's a fucking terrible movie. So bad Friedkin does not mention it in his biography, not even to slag it off. But these are 2 actors that should not be in the same, kind of like De Niro and Charles Grodin, where it's like, what are these 2 going to do in a movie? One's a really serious actor, one is more comic, and their chemistry works. And there's just so much about Ghostbusters, it's like it doesn't take itself seriously, and that's kind of why it works. And our friend Dave Sipkin thinks it might be the ultimate New York movie because what's so great about the first Ghostbusters is that New York has a very New York response to the ghosts attacking. It's a PG movie. There's not a lot of profanity, but there is that scene where Rick Moranis is like saying something. The guy's like, "Oh, what an asshole!" Like it's like there's two moments in this movie that aren't quoted, that aren't part of pop culture that I want to just kind of call out. And they both involve old women in hallways. So there's a theme here. So when they go on their first job, um, and the first time you see the proton blasters and the housekeeper is like ducks behind like a cart, and then she goes, "What the hell are you doing?" I just love that response because it's not like it's just so like New York. Like what do you do? And then there's another one that's like harder to quote because it's sort of more visual. Um, Toward the end when you see the whatever the dog is, like what is that thing called? Like the hellhound dog, the stop motion thing. When it goes into the hallway and this old woman walks outside and she goes, "Oh," and she just turns around. It's like she's seeing a rat or a snake. It's like such a realistic response to seeing like this literally this otherworldly thing. So, I mean, you've already talked a lot about Ghostbusters, but I just kind of wanted to call out some of the specific reasons why I think I mean, everybody loves this movie, but I don't know that everybody quite understands what's irreplicable about it. All right. So, Matt, what is your number one movie of 1984?
It's not Amadeus. It's not Amadeus. I
Okay.
don't know. I don't know if we're going to be in agreement here. The number one film of 1984 that I think has had more of an impact than any other film that year on current film and just life is Terminator.
Okay. Good choice.
So Terminator, Skynet, AI, fear of technology. Terminator took a very simple premise. Robot from the future comes back to kill the mother of the resistance, right? It's a very simple premise, but James Cameron doesn't do anything simply. He does everything, like unnecessarily complicated. If you think about like The Abyss and like his, highbrow films before Avatar, like there's a lot going on there about social commentary and about fear of the future. And what we're living right now with like AI kind of destroying every aspect of entertainment and a lot of jobs and what are these servers going to do to the environment and what is AI going to do when it becomes sentient and all this, like everyone's joking like haha our robot overlords, right? Well, James Cameron invented that with Terminator. Conan notwithstanding, Arnold Schwarzenegger was not a household name until Terminator.
Yeah, that's true.
And Terminator created the "I'll be back" phrase.
Yeah,
and it created just pretty much like the entire dystopian future coming back to haunt the present kind of premise. And like you were saying about like 84 feeling like the 80s, right? Nothing feels more 80s than Linda Hamilton's haircut. Right? I mean, like you can't get more 80s than the fucking Nikes that Kyle Reese is wearing.
Yeah.
That he picks up off the homeless guy or wherever he gets them from.
And Club Noir, and so, the club they go to, the music that's playing, very 80s.
Yeah, the whole thing is like extremely 80s, and you've got like the strobes and the neon and the leather and everything.
Yeah.
And I think that when you look at like how that IP is still alive, and they're still trying to find interesting things to do with it.
Yeah.
And it's one of the few franchises where the sequel is arguably better than the original, if not on par with the original. It was just it's kind of like it came out of nowhere in the sense that no one knew that this movie was coming from the director of Piranha 2, right? And it launched, like you were saying with Romancing the Stone, like it launched so many people's careers.
Yeah.
The convergence of all these perfect things at the perfect time. If you didn't have Arnold, Terminator wouldn't have worked. The fact that James Patrick works in Terminator 2, Robert Patrick, sorry.
Yeah.
The fact that Robert Patrick works in Terminator 2 really says a lot about Robert Patrick's acting, that this tiny little guy could take on Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
But that's only because it was such a mirror to this muscle. Like, just think how terrifying this giant, massive mountain of a man coming at you to try to kill you, and you don't know why.
Yeah.
And then it turns out he's a fucking robot.
Yeah.
Like when the exoskeleton, and this is, I think it was Stan Winston who did the original T-800 effects. it's all stop motion. When he comes out and he's pure
Yeah.
exoskeleton robot fucking Terminator, after he gets melted in the explosion, and he's coming after her, pure horror film,
Yeah.
monster film, Freddy coming after you, Michael Myers coming after you, and he's just like, he's got the bum leg, and he's like just like coming after Linda Hamilton, coming after her, and it's like, you can't stop this fucking thing, right? Like, just how terrifying that was. And then you fast forward all these years, and it's still as terrifying. And now technologically, we're so much closer to that reality.
Yeah.
That I when, you know, if you were to ask any Joe on the street, hey, what do you think about AI? I think maybe at least 3 out of 10 would say Skynet.
Yeah.
Right. The number one film in 1984 for me, even though I love Amadeus, I think from a cultural standpoint, Terminator is the number one film of that year.
You made a point I was going to make. I just want to echo it, that I think that Terminator, even if you were to, and you shouldn't, but if you were to take out the sci-fi part of it, you can make a really great thriller or horror movie about this big dude trying to kill this woman and how scary that is. The only other point I want to make, which I think you would agree with, is because the budget on Terminator for the last time ever in a James Cameron movie was small. I think it was like $6 million. It has a real early John Carpenter feel to it. And Cameron came from a similar kind of Corman school.
Yeah.
And I think that adds to the sort of that adds to the grit of the movie, that he didn't have $150 million. And
I think that's crazy that it was only made for $6 million. Like, when you look at the explosions and the action sequences and the fucking, just the stop motion at the end, like, that's crazy.
Well, Cameron told us,
stretch that budget.
He told this great story that 10 years later on True Lies, which at the time was the most expensive movie, was like $120 million. And he had for the whole opening sequence where they're, with the ski thing, he had to, for whatever reason, cut a day out, even at that budget level. And he went back to his Corman training and just condensed the action and like drill down his shot lists and all that, and just kind of use those muscles. And so he was still, because he comes from that school. That's why he got the Piranha 2 job, because that's a Corman movie, as was Piranha 1. So yeah, I mean, Terminator is probably, you always hear prescient. That's got to be on a top 3 or 5 list of prescient movies, and we haven't even taken the full measure of how prescient it is. So great choice. I agree with everything that you said. So my number one movie of 1984 is The Karate Kid.
That's unexpected. Okay.
Yeah. Well, like Rocky, if you strip away everything that followed this, meaning all the sequels and spin-offs, and in this case, a streaming series, you'd still have a great movie. Like Rocky, this is a more emotionally sophisticated and deep movie than its pop culture reputation would have you believe. Like Rocky, this was directed by John G. Avildsen, who did have a spotty track record, but was undeniably great with actors. So in our previous episode, I talked about how Risky Business was more than just a high school sex comedy, which you might think it is, not having seen it in a while. I think The Karate Kid is more than just sort of a high school sports movie. I think all the acting in this movie is so natural and so strong. Pat Morita is nominated for Best Supporting Actor. We talked about Best Supporting Actor earlier. He's the only he's the only nomination this movie gets, period. And the ending of this movie always fucking shreds me. And I think that the streaming series has made me kind of recontextualize the Johnny character. But even before I saw that, I always liked how in the climax of this movie, there's that moment where Johnny realizes that his sensei is fucking nuts. And you realize, like, oh, this kid is being bullied too. Like, this really is just a fucking kid. Just like Daniel is just a fucking kid. And, I mean, everyone knows this movie. I'm just not sure that everyone really appreciates this movie the way I think it did, the way I think they would if it stood on its own, kind of like Rocky. Like, if there was never a Rocky 2, I think Rocky would still have the impact as just being a great movie. And I think that this movie is right on par with it. And I don't think it's an accident that it's the same director. And yeah, all the performances in this are great. I think what I like about this movie is that the Ralph Macchio character is really kind of a self-involved punk. and he has this arc where he realizes, okay, this isn't all about, like, when he finds out that Miyagi was interned and he lost his wife, like, he realizes, okay, this isn't about me. And yeah, this movie has its 80s as shit, like Terminator and all the movies we're talking about for the most part. But yeah, I think that yeah, this Karate Kid's something I always liked, but I think now that I understand screenplays and how movies are made, I just think that this is the best movie of 1984 in a year filled with great movies.
I like to think about these kind of films now that we're adults, right? That we saw when we were kids,
Mhm.
and how they kind of changed for me
Yeah,
over time.
sure.
And so, like when I think of ET and when I think of Karate Kid, um, single moms, right?
Yeah.
And this is also the same, I think, for Exorcist, maybe.
Is she a single? Yeah, I
I think
guess
is she a single
she's
mom? Yeah, because she's gonna date the director at some
right.
point
She's an
before Reagan
actress.
kills her.
Yeah, she's a single
She's an
mom in that.
actress.
Yeah, you're right.
And so like when I see these movies, like when I saw Boyhood, and I'm like, I think we talked about this when Boyhood came out,
Yeah,
that like if we had saw this movie in college, we would have definitely identified with the kid.
yeah,
But now that we're older, like we're identifying with Patricia Arquette and Ethan Hawke more, and it's kind of like you can watch these movies at different stages of your life and pick up different things. And so kind of like how I like to watch Fight Club from the perspective of Helena Bonham Carter's character and how fucked up it is that she's dealing with Tyler Durden
yeah,
this whole time. You don't realize that it's like, oh wait, this guy loves me, now he hates me. You
yeah.
look at Karate Kid, and this is a kid who comes to, what is it, Reseda? Where is it?
Reseda. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, yeah. Reseda.
So he comes to Reseda, and he leaving his entire life with his mom, and they're just the two of them alone in the world, and all he wants to do is like try to recapture what he had with his friends that he left and he no longer has.
Sure.
And just kind of how sad that is, a starting point for a character. And to Ralph Macchio's credit, he doesn't play it sad.
No.
Right, like he comes across as the cocky kid that you're talking about, but it's all kind of like a defense mechanism for being in a new environment and trying to like not be bullied, and then being bullied anyway, and like your charisma is only going to take you so far, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, he gets all that stuff stripped away from him, and he has to start over with Pat Morita. Yeah, really interesting pick for your number one film.
Our next category is Spotlight, where we spotlight something from any movie, like a performance, cinematography, score, stunt sequence, or whatever aspect that popped for us in any movie. So, Matt, what thing or things do you want to spotlight from any movies in 84?
First thing is the upside down room sequence in Nightmare on Elm Street, where they literally built the set on a gimbal and they turned it upside down and poured blood up onto the ceiling. And it's really an amazing shot all by itself, just for having built that set at that scale, at that budget, for that kind of movie. But this is one of those like movie accident things that I love about just like the art of cinema, is they didn't get the angle exactly right when they shot it, and I think they only had enough money to do like one take on it.
Oh, really?
And the blood kind of drips in this weird way because they couldn't rotate the set all the way around. But it's so eerie and crazy that they kept it in the movie, and it's become iconic. And so I just want to highlight that as being just this feat of technical wizardry for such a small film.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I'd like to highlight is Body Double. The fact that Body Double came out in '84, and we're not talking about fucking Body Double. Bill Maher should have been a much bigger movie star, is all I'll have to say. I know it's not Bill Maher, but he looks exactly like Bill Maher. I know he's supposed to look like Jimmy Stewart, but he looks like Bill Maher.
He looks like both of them. I mean, he does look like Bill Maher.
If they had a bastard child, it would have been whatever that guy's name is.
Craig Wasson. Craig Wasson.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. But Body Double is such a crazy fucking movie that is, again, all the things I hate about movies, right? Unsympathetic character. He's a fucking peeping Tom, right? Twist for no reason. Like things like it's just so bonkers, but it's bonkers in a way that only De Palma can make bonkers work, and in a way that I don't think Dressed to Kill worked. Body Double was the first De Palma film that I saw where I was like, holy shit, I gotta go to fucking Hollywood Video and rent like all this guy's I got to see everything he makes.
Mhm.
And for me, Mission Impossible ended up being a really big movie when we were seniors in high school. That I was like, okay, I fucking love this guy.
Yeah.
And the Odessa stair sequence in Untouchables, and like I ended up being a huge fan of De Palma, but it all started with Body Double, and I can't put my finger on why, because that movie's reprehensible in all the right ways, but it's just the score, the mood, the set pieces, the tension. I think there's more tension in this than Sisters, and I think Sisters is really good for tension.
Mm.
I don't know. So I just want to highlight Body Double as a film. I think if you haven't seen it, you need to see it. If you have seen it, you have to revisit it.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the props to De Palma for making one of the fucking craziest films I've ever seen.
I'm going to spotlight 3 bravura sequences from 3 cinematic masters at the top of their game. And Matt, my first one is from Body Double.
Fantastic.
I'm glad you spotlighted the whole movie, because I was worried / hoping you were going to spotlight the same sequence that I did. But so I'm going to talk about the murder scene in Body Double. Now, sort of piggybacking on Matt's point, and again, listeners, we did not talk about this before. So there's a murder scene that happens in Body Double, and what's amazing about it is that it happens about 5 or 10 minutes after a sequence that is probably the worst thing in any Brian De Palma movie, or the craziest thing in any Brian De Palma movie. It takes place on a beach. When you watch the movie, you'll know it when you see it. To his credit, Brian De Palma has said, "Yeah, I kind of lost the thread here," but he kind of wins the movie and the audience back. Literally about 5 or 10 minutes later, there is a scene where, I guess spoilers for Body Double, there's a scene where a woman is murdered that is one of the best sequences that Brian De Palma has ever done. And to set it up, our hero, Craig Wasson, is watching this woman's house, and a burglar enters with this giant drill. This drill's got to be like 9 feet long. And the woman comes home, and the guy hides in a closet, and he calls her up to warn her that someone's in her house. And she answers the phone as the guy's coming behind her, and she goes, "Hello." And he goes, "Look out, he's right behind you." And then this sequence starts. And I remember seeing a commercial for Body Double. Maybe it was like on HBO or something. So maybe not when the movie came out, maybe like a year later, and just seeing that image of her answering the phone and him being like, "Look out, he's right behind you." And it freaked me the fuck out, much like the Freddy Krueger thing, for different reasons. I don't want to say what happens in this sequence following, but I want to say, like the whole movie, it's really taut. It's inventive. It's funny. It's everything that Brian De Palma does best. This movie, to echo what Matt said, is just fucking crazy, and there's so much wrong with it. And to me, I think it's my 4th or 5th favorite Brian De Palma movie. I talked a lot about it in the 1981 episode. I think I made this exact point. Dave Sipkin and I talked about S.O.B., and I said that S.O.B. is not my favorite Blake Edwards movie, but I think it's the quintessential Blake Edwards movie. I think Body Double is the quintessential Brian De Palma movie, even though I think Blowout is a better movie. Does that make sense? It's like, Body Double is like everything about De Palma. I mean, you could say Blowout is too, but Blowout,
like Body Double's got all the Hitchcock. It's got Rear Window. It's got Dial M for Murder. It's got fucking everything in there, right? It's got Psycho. It's got everything.
But going back to our original point, even though it's only 3 years difference, 1980 Blowout in 81, it looks like the late 70s. Body Double is the fucking 80s. There is a music video sequence to Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and Brian De Palma was like right when that song became popular, because he had said MTV was a big thing. Music videos were becoming a big thing. I put a music video, and he directed a Springsteen video. It's the one where Courtney Cox is pulled on stage.
Yeah, Dancing in the Dark, yeah.
It's not such a great video. I mean, it's like famous, but this is a better music video than Dancing in the Dark. It's just fucking crazy. So my second sequence is from Blake Edwards' movie Mickey and Maude, which most people might not have even heard of. So most of Blake Edwards' movies involve characters sneaking from one room to the other, like a French comedy. Mickey and Maude holds this note longer and more brilliantly than any movie in his entire career. It's practically an entire act. So the setup is that Dudley Moore has married 2 women and gotten 2 women pregnant, and both of them go into labor at the exact same time in the same hospital. So he literally has to be 2 places at once, and he has to keep inventing excuses to leave the other one to be with the other one. And he has to keep, which is what the whole movie is about.
What? That's insane. I've never heard of this movie.
Yeah, incredible, really, really great movie. The whole movie is about that, but the 2 women are never together, and they both, because the setup is that Dudley Moore's married to this woman who doesn't want to have kids, and he ends up having an affair and getting his girlfriend pregnant, and he's about to leave his wife, and then she says, "I'm pregnant," and he ends up marrying the other one, so he's a bigamist. They both go into labor at the same time. I swear to God, it's like 20 or 30 minutes of just in this hospital, him going from one room to the other. This is the only other movie they made together because they made 10 5 years earlier, which is another great movie. And the whole movie is building toward this. Like, you know, this is going to happen. You know that he's going to be in a situation where he's got to keep these 2 women apart. And it might not even be fair to call it a sequence because, again, he holds this note for like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, whatever it is. It's a really, really great movie. It's been kind of lost to time, but it's another master filmmaker doing what he does best. This is like like De Palma to Murder is Blake Edwards to like farce and going in and out of rooms. Yeah, this I'm recommending the whole movie, but it's really worth it for this climax. It's just fucking virtuoso. Last thing I want to spotlight, this is a movie that we've talked about earlier, is the Club Obi-Wan scene from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which is the opening. This is easily the most famous of the 3 things I'm talking about. Even though Sean Connery is in the next Indy movie, the Bond influence over Indiana Jones is never more apparent than it is in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So Harrison Ford fucked up his back and had to fly back to America and do back surgery. So Spielberg had a lot of time to shoot this musical sequence. He had a lot of time to fill. So he just shot the hell out of the opening musical number of this movie. And he always had wanted to make a musical. He eventually did with West Side Story. The setup of this is so fantastic that Indy gets poisoned and the bad guy says, "Here's the antidote," and all hell breaks loose. And again, like I said about the movie, there's nothing like this in Raiders. This is like its own thing. It's tonally more like Raiders than the rest of Temple of Doom, but it is so fucking fun and it is so inventive. And I'll say it, all 5 indie movies get off to a great start to varying degrees. The first 3 obviously are heads and shoulders above 4 and 5. But what's interesting about this is that it's so fun and does not in any way prepare you for the movie that's going to follow. Like, you are not at all prepared for what's coming, even though I've already said it earlier in the show that I like this. So much like Mickey and Maude and Body Double, this is another master filmmaker just doing what he does best. And I just love this sequence. I always have. I just think it's so fun and so inventive and so funny and exciting. And yeah, I mean, it's what you want from this franchise.
Can I add a spotlight based on your spotlights?
Absolutely.
And I think it's also filmmakers at the master, the peak of their craft. The underwater fight sequence in Top Secret.
Great. Love that movie.
I just thought of it when you were like spotlighting specific sequences, right? Like,
yeah,
the choreography and technical wizardry of that. Like Top Secret's a really fun movie top to bottom, but the underwater fight sequence is gotta just stand out as one of the technical achievements for comedies in any movies actually. But yeah, I'd add that to the pile.
Great list. It would be great addition to my list because again, it is in this case Abraham Zucker, who did Airplane. This was their movie after Airplane. Top Secret's really fucking funny and something you should check out if you don't even know what it is. All right, you can find me on Instagram and Letterboxd, both Edward Clow. I will have published my best movies of 1984 to list. That'll be up when this episode airs. You can also see 83, 82, 81, 80. I took my favorite movies and I ranked them. And so you can see my list for 84. Amadeus is on there. And a lot of the movies we talked about are on there. You could also see some short films I've done on Vimeo. And if you If you have any questions or comments you want to send them to hindsightingquestions@gmail.com. So that's our show. Next episode, Fiona Kennedy and I will discuss the best picture of 1985, Out of Africa. Till then, looking forward to looking back.